We talked about our aesthetic as being where Kirby meets Kubrick, where Jack Kirby meets Stanley Kubrick. How could we combine 2001 with Fantastic Four?
Hi, how are you, Matt? How is it going?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm glad to be talking with you. I'm a huge Marvel fan, but more specifically, I absolutely love the Fantastic Four, and I'm thrilled with everything that's been teased about the movie so far. So Matt, to start things off, I wanted to ask, something that's never been done before in a Fantastic Four movie is this retro-futuristic style and the 60s setting, which feels so accurate considering the characters were originally created in that years. Was this your vision from the beginning, or were there other ideas during development?
Yes, this was the idea, the idea of putting them where they belong, where they were created in the 60s in the middle of the space race. Their DNA is very much that time of dreaming about conquering the unknown and the idea that with the right technology, the right heart, the right mind, you could conquer anything.
Perfect. And speaking of retro tones, you work with different eras and visual languages in WandaVision, one of Marvel's most unique TV shows. What elements or lessons from that experience were useful when shaping Fantastic Four First Steps?
They are similar in a way. WandaVision is also about family, about husband and wife, about children, and it was about building a very specific world. That world was different because it was sitcoms throughout history, but this one was this retro future 1960s. I think what I learned from WandaVision is just authenticity. No detail is too small. You have to build everything from the ground up, everything from the cars and the clothing, the props, the watches, you name it. Everything is a part of building a cohesive, believable world. And I wanted it to feel grounded. So we approached it practically, right? We built enormous sets. We built a Times Square set that was 2/3 scale. We built Yancey Street, which was basically the Lower East Side of New York. We filmed in practical locations as much as we could. We built these gorgeous interior sets. The more grounded it could be, the more believable it could be. I think the more believable it is for us as the folks making the movie, but also for the people watching it.
Everything we've seen until now looks great, so thank you for that. Now, I want to get into the family concept. The Fantastic Four are Marvel's first family, and much of the cast has experience playing characters in family-centered stories like Pedro Pascal in The Last of Us, Vanessa Kirby in The Crown, or Ebon Moss in The Bear. How important was building a family-like chemistry, and did you feel that spark with the cast from the very beginning, or you had to work it out?
Yes, casting is everything for the Fantastic Four, and feeling like a family, a believable family, is essential. So I needed to get people who were perfect for their individual roles, but who also would be believable as a husband and a wife, as brother and sister, as best friend. And so I worked really hard to do that and put together an ensemble that I felt would have the best chemistry. And luckily they did, and we did a lot of rehearsal to kind of help build that history, kind of create those bonds, so that by the time we started rolling the cameras, they really felt like a family already.
And if I had to make a top 5 list of the most iconic Marvel villains, Galactus will definitely be on it. We are now in a moment where mainstream audiences already know legendary villains like Thanos or Loki. What do you think makes this version of Galactus worthy of showing in that pantheon?
Yeah, Galactus is a classic Marvel villain, and probably in the top 2 Fantastic Four villains. He's the largest, oldest thing in the universe. He is awesome. He is fantastic in every way, right? 1,000 feet tall, 14 billion years old, and he's a cosmic force of nature. And I love that this movie was about that giant cosmic space vampire coming in contact with the youngest, most innocent thing in the world, which is a baby, right? The newest, freshest thing meets the oldest, biggest thing, and that's really what this movie is about.
Speaking about the Marvel Universe, the MCU is currently so vast and full of possibilities. You got the Spider-Man, you got the Mutants, Avengers, Thunderbolts, and now you're getting the Fantastic Four. Which characters would you love to see them interact with in the future, whether they are already part of the MCU or not?
Yeah, I mean, the Fantastic Four could interact with almost anyone, you know. Obviously, from the pages of the Fantastic Four came a lot of our classic heroes. Black Panther is introduced, Wakanda is introduced in the pages of Fantastic Four. I'd love to see that. Spider-Man is often a member of the Fantastic Four, and he and Johnny Storm are very close friends. That's a dynamic that would be wonderful to see on screen. Namor, of course, is a complicating factor in the Fantastic Four and threatens Reed and Sue's marriage at times. That would be interesting to see. I mean, there are kind of unlimited potential for who they could interact with, and that would be fun to watch.
Well, I want to get more into the Fantastic Four pages. Like Marvel has already recommended fans read Fantastic Four #1, The Coming of Galactus, and Life Story. Would you like to expand a bit on which specific storylines or inspiration influenced you most in making this film?
Those are definitely up there, along with Jonathan Hickman's run that leads into Time Runs Out and Secret Wars. You know, his version of Fantastic Four that introduces the Future Foundation, the Council of Reeds. You know, I think that's also incredibly important. But listen, we looked at every comic book issue created about the Fantastic Four, and brilliant people like Byrne, you know, Fraction, Dan Slott, Mark Waid, so many amazing folks, but also Kirby and Lee, just going back to that initial famous run that launched the Silver Age. That was probably our chief inspiration.
Perfect. And talking about influences, like the space race was a major part of global history, and the Fantastic Four started in comics during that same period. Was there any cinematic reference when portraying space or astronauts?
We talked about our aesthetic as being where Kirby meets Kubrick, you know, where Jack Kirby meets Stanley Kubrick. How could we combine 2001 with Fantastic Four? I loved imagining them as the Apollo 11 astronauts, and the idea that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin weren't the first ones to the moon. It was the Fantastic Four. And we even see the moon in the movie, and there's a Future Foundation flag planted there instead of a U.S. flag. So I was very inspired by 2001, by the Apollo 11 documentary that came out a few years ago. That's extraordinary. Seeing that in IMAX is a revelation, and that was very inspiring. Interstellar, Apollo 13, The Right Stuff. So many films, you know, really touch on this idea of conquering the unknown and what it takes to go up there and trying to make space feel real. Yeah. You know, we have zero gravity in our world, in this world, and in the Fantastic Four. You know, I love Guardians of the Galaxy. I love, you know, Marvel space that we've seen before, but they're walking around on their ship like Star Trek, you know, and I wanted space to feel much more fragile, much scarier, make it feel more like Apollo 11.
Yeah, it feels so good and so real. So congratulations with that part. Matt, this is my last question. You've done incredible work before in TV shows like Game of Thrones, Succession, and WandaVision, of course, but this marks your first big screen feature movie. How was the challenge of stepping into this format for the first time?
Oh, it's great. You know, I've grown up going to the theater and dreaming of getting a chance to make a movie that would come out in the summer that people would see in the same way that I went to go see Raiders of the Lost Ark and Back to the Future, you know, and Star Wars. So I'm a huge Marvel fan growing up. I'm a huge fan of the MCU, and the chance to contribute to that is really, it's a pinch me moment. It's amazing.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Matt. It was truly a pleasure. I'm really looking forward to the release of the Fantastic Four First Steps, and I hope to talk to you again in a future interview.
Definitely. Thank you so much.